Hey guys, I'm Prairie Vintage, and this solar eclipse must be heavily charged because I don't generally do just impromptu readings so frequently, and this one very impromptu because I'm in my truck and I had to pull over, and this is hitting me really heavy, and it was about triggering, okay? Which is funny because I haven't been triggered in a while. Well, I'm generally triggered, but not like severely, but the last trigger would have been like about a month ago, like I mentioned, in regards to what was going on with my twin flame. But triggering, and so I've been making a point of meditating and doing the meditation practices again because it's easy to slip off and and then feel as though things are better and you just kind of don't need it. So I started meditating again and trying to find peace. And when I was done, I laid down, and my head was feeling, at first it felt like really kind of heavy. It wasn't painful, but it just kind of felt heavy, and then it felt like it was like opening up on all sides and feeling like a balloon. Okay, so this felt like someone blowing in a balloon, like constantly blowing air in this balloon and blowing, and so it was getting like bigger and bigger and bigger, and I was like, oh my god, like my head is going to explode. Sitting there, and my eyes were closed, and I'm laying down, and I'm not asleep, and so it was after my meditation. So then as I'm sitting there, and I started to like really feel, and it was getting to the point where I was like starting to get a panic. And for those of you guys who might just start meditating, at first when you get those panic attacks when you meditate, you stop yourself and your mind gets involved, and it's this whole process you have to kind of overcome, because the anxiety of wherever your mind is going or wherever this meditation is taking you is kind of feels almost like out of control. So well, for me anyway, I kind of step in there trying to like control this wherever it's going, right? So I'm laying there, and then this anxiety, and I was like, no, this is energy rising, from my kundalini all the way up to my crown. And I've read about like crown chakra opening and going through kundalini and feeling the head pressure. And I've never really felt like head pressure so much in my third eye. Yes, especially when I meditate and like tingling, my head. But this was like not only a tingling, like tingling was happening, but also this like blow up feeling. And I was like on the verge of, oh my god, like something's gonna happen. So I was about to like panic mode. I was like, no, just relax. And so I managed to like breathe my way through this. And as my mind was kind of stopped in a way, it was getting quiet, and I started to feel like just really oneness with my pillow, with my mattress, with the air, and like everything around me felt like I was outside, but I had like eyes all around my head so I can like see. And so I'm like, this is quite profound. And I started feeling like a really like peaceful Satori feeling again, okay, like kind of like when you meditate, but it felt a little bit more a little bit more like a blissful peacefulness, like almost like pure joy. And I was like, oh, okay, this feels good, but why is it taking me here? And then I felt spirit coming in very heavy, like prompting me to get answers. And I was like, okay, like I do need answers. And I'm thinking, right, like, so I was like, what are my questions? And as I sit there, and I'm sitting in the state, and it was like, all the answers. There was no question right now that would be important enough to ask at this certain time. Like it was such a, I don't know, like it was almost like sharing my mind with God, or like sitting with an all-knowing being, where all of the questions that I had, like previous to me even doing the meditation, just kind of dissipated. And so I was like, well, I thought I had questions, right? But I was like, I feel I know all these answers, like, but yet there's no like subject matter in my head. I know this is a weird one, guys. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, there's no subject matter, there's no question. And I feel I know the answers, but then I was like, okay, so what are the answers? You know, like, what are the answers to life? I'm thinking here, like, what are these answers? And so I got this energy coming in, like being fed information from the divine, and it was in regards to triggering. And when I get triggered, generally I just like to scrap everything. Okay, like normally I'm just like a doer. I stick to it, I try to get her done, and I'm just like someone who confronts. I don't run away generally, like I just confront and deal with. But deeper than that, the triggers that I think touch me more sensitively, I think I shut down and I do run away, because it's easier for me to deal with it that way than to deal with the disappointment. So this is like preventative trigger. Like I'll shut down or I'll get triggered if I anticipate I'm going to be let down, disappointed, or feel saddened or pained or hurt by someone or something, and it just, I don't want to deal with it. Okay, like generally I'll just, I do always choose the truth in most matters, like 9 times out of 10. But when it comes to sensitive issues regarding feelings, emotions, and that sort of thing, it's like easier for me just to not feel it. And so this has become relevant to me as I go through my twin flame journey and shadow work and all of this stuff. So what's been happening is that in my own situation is I'll get triggered and I'll just completely like run away, or like not run so much as say, well, I don't need this anymore, and I just kind of scrap it. Like I just really scrap it. Like I don't want to deal with headaches, I don't want to deal with people, I put up my boundaries, I'm done, I feel empowered. Okay, so that's the feeling I get empowered, or so I tell myself. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, yeah, spirit, like I'm empowered, like are you here validating? And spirit's like, no, that's not it. Spirit's saying, sit with the thing, whatever the thing is, right? The twin flame, the person, the situation, the trigger. And spirit was telling me that situation, that person doesn't need to get scrapped, doesn't need to be pulled away, doesn't need to be removed from the equation. What needs to happen is I need to look within myself at that triggering. And spirit said, when you put your finger on that, when you find that it's within you, you will no longer find any situation that brings up that emotion triggering. So I was like, okay, this makes sense, because it's been repetitive, especially with my twin flame, where I'll feel like I don't, just not validated, or like I want, like, I don't know, like confirmation, or just like communication, or whatever it is that I'm wanting, like, but it triggers me. And it's like, it shouldn't trigger me, because I already know that what I know is like, he's the way he is, right? Like I should be just accepting of it. And most times, 9 times out of 10 I am. And the one time that I just get so fucking triggered, and I'm just like, I'm done, like I can't anymore. And it just happens, right? And I was like, fuck, I hate this, because I'm causing these vicious cycles and loops with this triggering, like, because I know in my truth, it's like there's something there I need to look at. And my answer isn't to scrap it all, because I don't want to scrap anything that speaks to my heart and speaks to me. Although in the moment I feel like I'd be more empowered and best off to do this. So I'm like, okay, spirit, what do you mean? Like, and then spirit's like, you could still be in whatever your situation is, and that trigger is coming from something within you that needs to be uncovered. And so as I'm like right about to say, well, what is it? And like, help me. And spirit's like telling me, like telepathically here, downloading this, if I were to tell you, child, you wouldn't heal it, and it wouldn't be like, you wouldn't be able to resolve it. So part of the untying of this thing and the shadow work and the resolution is the process in finding it, because in the process of finding it, I have to pull the threads of everything else that's intertwined with that shadowed self. And so it's a ball of things that I have to like peel away, right? So I'm like, okay, good point. Like there's something within me I need to be really looking at. And now I feel as though, I've been doing shadow work for quite some time. Like even previous to my spiritual awakening, I was doing shadow work, whether I was knowing it was shadow work or not, calling it that, probably not, but very self-aware, very much trying to strive to be the nicest, kindest, best version of myself, but I still had ego, and I was not aware of what ego really meant until the spiritual awakening, and knowing that ego is all of those stories and illusions our mind tell us, and like, what is a kind person, what is the best, what is all of those ideas that I thought I was striving to be, like that was fake. Like what I was striving to be was just an imaginary thing, you know. Like we can have something to strive for sure, but we have to question, like in our mind, when we say I want to be that person, that kind person, like what's that kind person and what's that person, and who's to say, and where did you come up with that story that is the ultimate, or that why do you even desire that state, right? So I was like, okay, so through the spiritual awakening, I've been doing this like shadow work, and now with the ego falling off, I was like thinking, okay, so yeah, I don't want to run or pull away or get triggered and shut down. And then all of a sudden, you know, when I had space and time, and be like, okay, like, I'm sorry I ran, or I'm sorry I snapped at you, or I'm sorry I did the thing I didn't want to do, you know? So it's like, I'm supposed to sit with that, well, although that's very hard, easier said than done. But Spirit's giving me this as a clear green light answer that made complete sense to me, because Spirit is saying, this will not only repeat with that said person, that said situation, but if you completely remove yourself and scrap it, you now enter a new phase with someone else, something else that repeats the exact same thing, which we know about, right? Like we know if we don't heal traumas, they repeat. Like you can be in the same sort of situations with different relationships and get the same results, like same abusers, same narcissists, same liars, users, pathological people, same types of people, same people who don't know how to deal with things, right? So you cannot run away from it. Like, I mean, you could constantly be in a state of doing the same thing and pushing it off on it's that person or it's that situation, and I gotta find the one that doesn't trigger me in that way. But there is no one that's never going to trigger you, because you're always, Spirit was telling me, like, you're always going to have to work with someone, something that has its own frequency that may cause a trigger at some point in time. So why not peel the layer of what your triggering is, because then it doesn't matter what relationship or who you're dealing with or what situation, you're not going to get triggered. I mean, egos are always there, so you always find the different ego, right, or the different thing that triggers. But there are main ones within the darkness, within yourself, that need to be identified, that are specific to you, specific to your programming, specific to your conditioning and indoctrination, beliefs and story and illusions that you've carried. So what is it? You know, what is it? Like, and when I was looking back on it, like the biggest trigger for me was feeling like I needed to be shown love, you know, like if I wasn't reciprocated what I felt I was giving, you know, then for me it was a big trigger. It really hurt. And that's a big one, because we know about equal reciprocity, and a give and take is much needed, you know, for balance. And when I sat there and I was thinking, you can never really fully have balance if you remove the ego. Because if you really think about it, what I might think is what I want back as equal coming from the other source, they might not see that thing as the equal value for what it was that I gave them. So who am I to say what I'm outputting equates to this much of your output back to me? Like, I'm not the judge of this, right? So it's like I have to trust that those people and those situations aren't going to impact me in any way, whether they give me more than, you know, and when I say give, it's like energetic exchange, okay? That's what I'm talking about. Whether they overcompensate and make me feel love and reciprocated, or if they under, because they're just in shadow, and I extend compassion and see that this person hasn't found God and open heart consciousness, and they may short me out on something, right? Which ties me back to that total solar eclipse reading that I was doing about being shortchanged, and feeling like if you're a good person in this world and doing good things, and feeling really like just let down by people and let down by situations, is like, God, like, does it pay to be kind? Does it pay to be open-hearted and good and giving, and, you know, and be suffering and pain? And so, yeah, it tied beautifully to this, because it was like, God's saying that suffering's coming from with me, from my programming. Like, I do not need to feel this way, because that external component person that I cannot control, nor should I control, nor do I have any say over what's moral or ethic or whatever, that entity can either contribute energetically or not, and I can engage or not, but how I take that in is totally solely up to me. So that is why I would trigger and just cut it off and say, okay, well, if this person and this thing isn't, in my eyes, mirroring back to me reciprocity in a way that I find balanced and equal, it's my decision to say, see you later. But it's a revolving door, because no one and no thing will consistently match that. And if you do get that for a period of time, you can, sure, because it happens and things happen all the time, but at some point that person, that thing is going to slip, or isn't going to match it, or won't understand it, because you have no control, nor should you have control. And so the only way to fix it is to not need it, to not need something back, like to not need someone to give you back anything, like to not, like depend on your happiness and your contentment and your feeling of self-worth and love. Like for me, it was like love, feeling love, like that. If nobody loves me around me, then how can you feel loved? It's like nobody loves me, like you just feel saddened by that, right? But it's like, that's not even true. Like nobody can love you and you still be absolutely, totally happy and loved, because that is so within you. Like your heart is pure and open and only knows love. Like the heart does not know hate, because the heart is your soul. It's direct to God. God knows no hate. God knows no judgment. God knows no lack. God knows no suffering, okay? All of that stuff exists in the world, but that's lack of God. That's lack of love. That's lack of seeing the light. God is light. God is love. So when we bring God, when we bring light, when we bring this awareness, we shed the light on the darkness, and all of that goes away. The lack, the feelings of being inadequate, and all of that negative sort of emotion or heavy emotion, it slowly just goes away, because you're constantly bringing the light. And so my heart is open. Like I feel my heart is open here with this unconditional love. So I was thinking, like, why am I still then feeling unloved, man? And God's like telling me, like, child, like you are loved beyond measure, and there was nothing for me to sit with, like to pull the wool over, pull the thread apart is what I was trying to say about what happened to me specifically, and back in 1993, like my whatever did this, like what I was looking for was like, hey, what's this experience, and what is this thing that's caused this complex, and why am I feeling this way? And then it was like, no, it's not the thing. It's just identifying how you're feeling, and me connecting that I was feeling unloved, and then me always going back to the universal truth. God is love. God is light. And God's like, yes, child. Like that's the answer. God is love. God is light. Because any issue that I see, regardless if I know how it got there or my trauma, how it got there doesn't matter. What matters is I tell myself the story I'm telling myself is lack of God and light, because I believe some illusion and some voice and some program that someone's told me, or something I believe to be true because I witnessed it or I experienced it. And that's all like through my filtration, the filtration that I'm perceiving these experiences, and only I perceive those experiences this way. There's no way that that's a truth that exists objectively. That's my own experiential truth, which is ego, because I can go away thinking I'm horrible, and this experience I was so miserable, or I was unloved, and all of these judgments, and all of that is ego, and not from God. So God's like, all of that speak, all of that, those thoughts, they're triggering these lack emotions from within me. So when I felt unloved, it was just trigger within me. It's like, oh my gosh, like I'm not getting love back, or I'm not feeling the love here. And so I just like, it would trigger this shutdown, this runaway, this block, this not wanting to compromise anymore, or even show up or give, or, and that is the negative energy, that's feeding the same negative energy, because the only way to shine the light of God is to pour out love, you know? So if I contract, if I'm like, I don't want to deal with this, and I hate this, and I judge this, and I this is hurtful, and this is lack, then I'm looking at this thing in a low vibrational energy, and I just feed the lowness. I don't shine the light in the dark, and the dark needs to say, hey, like, I know maybe now I don't feel it, but I know a truth, and the truth is God is love, and I am love, and all I need to do is understand that my story I'm telling myself is having this impact because I believe it, and it's not true. So tell your mind to be quiet and lean into your heart and know that you are love, you know, like anytime there's a trigger, lean into your heart, because that's where the truth is. And love, like, it ended up, what I heard in my head that was like getting bigger and bigger was, love really is the answer to all, you know, like love, God is the answer to all, because love is God. And so it was so like profound. All right. So anyway, I thought someone needed to hear this, and I hope this helped you guys. I love you guys very much. And if you're triggered, just remember the real objective truth. The real truth is that you aren't lacking anything. All of that has been an experience in your life that was validated by yourself, meaning you can also unvalidate those thoughts and those things you're telling yourself that you believe are limitations, and stories that you believe to be true, because none of that is true. You know, none of it is true. Only truth is God is love and light, and we have to just output exactly what we want energetically to come back to us. And you know, if we output love, it's the law of energy. You output love, 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 and love comes right back to you. You know, if you're feeling lack, that means you're not giving love. If you're feeling sad, that means you're not giving happiness. So that's the message. All right, I love you guys. I'll see you soon. Bye.